I came here today to talk to you about a new bill that was signed in the most recent legislature. It's going into effect September 1st, along with a ton of other bills.
Right.
But this one is HB 611. It specifically addresses the issue of doxing, which is, as you know, the unlawful disclosure of an address, a telephone number, basically any really personal information on a public platform with the intent to threaten or cause harm, something like that. It will now be a misdemeanor.
Yes.
Class B, potentially Class A, depending on how far the case goes. So what can you tell me about, as an attorney, any kind of experience with cases like this, or just like in general online harassment kind of things that you've seen?
Yeah, unfortunately, online harassment, doxing, these are things that are on the rise in our country, and a lot of it has to do with social media use. Some of it is our political culture, of course, but there is definitely an increase in these things, particularly for people who are younger. And so these laws are meant to be an extension or a protection to stop that from happening as much as we can.
Okay. And when you say it affects younger people, could you give me kind of a ballpark age range that you're referring to?
Yeah, typically as younger individuals like teenagers start getting online, some of their friends may want to even joke with them or sometimes harass them, and they don't realize the consequences or implications of releasing someone's address or number online. And so they're more inclined to do it just because they don't realize the relative risk, and so it can disproportionately impact younger people.
Okay, so doxing, you would say, is somewhat a form of cyberbullying, which we see all too often these days, it feels like, right?
Absolutely. Doxing is definitely a form of cyberbullying, and this law was specifically intended to cover two specific types of cyberbullying in the sense of releasing the address or the phone number of the individual. So there are cyberbullying laws in Texas, and this was meant to be a complement to that, to make sure that these specific types of attacks on people are criminalized.
Okay. And in your professional opinion, do you think that this new law is written in a way that's specific enough to actually catch perpetrators?
I think the law is written in as balanced a way as they can. You can be too specific or too broad sometimes, and that's dangerous as well. It's very broad, but I think it's generally applicable in the sense that it will go after the individuals they're trying to go after. The problem they'll run into is proving the intent to cause harm. And that's always a tricky thing to try to prove what was in someone's mind when they released information to the public.
Absolutely. And we know in cases like this, a lot of times emotions are running high, people don't realize what they're doing, and eventually run into problems with the law because of a heated argument or a relationship gone wrong.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can attest to?
Absolutely. Yeah, emotion typically is driving a lot of this. Typically, or most of the time, it seems that doxing is a result of an emotional interaction. It's not the cold, calculated thing you see on TV where somebody is trying really hard to do harm to someone. It's normally a reaction to something else. And this law, I think, does a good job by going after the intent of the individual to do harm. So it's capturing those people who are actually trying to do something in the moment to really do damage to someone's life or their family.
Okay, and just in your research that you've done, I know you haven't had too much time to look at it, but how would you kind of summarize this new bill?
Yeah, basically if somebody releases online your phone number or your address with the intent to do harm or threaten you with harm, they can be punished criminally for that. It's pretty broad in that sense. And so that's the basic gist of it. It's a Class B misdemeanor, and it's a Class A misdemeanor if that interaction causes harm to you or your family. So it's a very simple bill, but it covers a lot of ground in its simplicity, and it's much needed, to be honest.
And I think we touched on this a little bit, but obviously technology, we live in an age where everybody has access, and social media is so prevalent in most people's lives. So how do you think that do you think that has an effect on why this bill was written and why it was ultimately signed?
Absolutely. What everybody is seeing in law enforcement or in the legal world is that this stuff is on the rise, and it's not going away. In fact, it's getting worse. And so there has to be something to come in and remedy it, and the only thing you can do is punish the misconduct. And so this bill was necessary for that reason. It's actually an improvement over what was there before, where only public servants were protected in this way. Now we've got this extension to the average person. We're all protected as well from our name and address, or our phone number and address being online.
Absolutely. All right, is there anything else that you would say as an attorney in terms of, I don't know, legal advice, expertise, how people can avoid doing this, even though I'm sure it does seem like a fairly obvious answer?
Yeah, the risk is you just want to be careful if you're posting an address or phone number online. And as a reminder, that bill just says that the intent really matters. You have to do it with the intent to harm or threaten somebody. But it makes you second guess it still, because you don't want to even be having to prove that it wasn't your intent. So there's going to be a little bit of a chilling effect for posting information, and it just is good for people to be careful about that when they're posting anything online. The other thing that I would add is that there are a number of remedies in Texas law for dealing with these kinds of issues. There are cyberbullying laws, there's harassment and stalking, all sorts of things out there. So this is just one helpful remedy in a toolkit of remedies to deal with online behavior. And if somebody is dealing with that or the victim of it, they need to reach out and seek help, because there are ways that they can get help.
Okay, and one other thing. With social media, it is very common for people to update on these platforms where they are, their location, sometimes their address. So this is something that people are putting out on the internet, maybe not with the intention of other people finding that information.
Right.
Needless to say, it is out there. So if someone was to get a address or a telephone number from a social media platform or anywhere on the internet, could that still be considered doxing?
I think in that situation where the online side is the one doing the posting, I think that's okay, because they're not trying to do harm, and usually the user knows exactly what they're doing, or hopefully does. You know, regardless of the source of that information, if it is repeated online by somebody else with that intent to harm, they are going to be criminally liable for doxing. And so they need to be careful, no matter the source, what they're posting and what their intent is in doing the posting.
Okay, so basically we can boil it down to the intent. That's going to be the major thing that prosecutors are going to have to prove,
Right.
to be able to punish
Right.
the defendant in whatever case it is, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in criminal law, it's typically that there's an action. We know what the action is. It's posting the information. And then there's what's inside the mind. The mens rea is what they call it. The second part's the harder part. What was that person trying to do? And that's what a lot of cases hinge on in any type of crime. And so it's no different here. They're going to have a clean case that shows that person was trying to do harm to that person.